In a world that never stops moving, have you ever felt inexplicably drained without understanding why? That feeling of mental fog, emotional numbness, and spiritual disconnection isn't just fatigue. It might be what the great psychologist Carl Jung would recognize as a depletion of your psychological energy field. While Jung himself never used the New Age term aura, his revolutionary work on the human psyche describes something remarkably similar: a personal energetic ecosystem that can be either nourished or poisoned by our daily habits. Before we continue, let's be clear: Jung was a scientist and psychiatrist, not a metaphysical guru. When I speak of aura throughout this video, I'm using it as an accessible metaphor for what Jung called the psychic energy system, the integrated consciousness that makes you uniquely you. This energy isn't mystical, it's psychological, but its effects on your life are profoundly real. There's a silent epidemic affecting this psychological energy field, a daily habit so normalized you likely engage in it without a second thought. It fragments your attention, scatters your consciousness, and keeps you perpetually on the surface of your own mind. I'm talking about our collective addiction to digital distraction, the constant state of divided attention that characterizes modern life. You might be experiencing this right now. Perhaps you've already checked your phone while watching this video, or your mind has drifted to the notifications you heard buzzing. This isn't a moral failing. It's the predictable result of living in an ecosystem designed to capture and monetize every fragment of your attention. My journey with Jung's work began 15 years ago in graduate studies in depth psychology. What struck me then, and what continues to amaze me now, is how accurately Jung predicted our current psychological crisis, decades before smartphones and social media. Jung understood that humans need integration, not fragmentation; depth, not perpetual novelty; and most importantly, connection to our deeper selves, not endless external distraction. What awaits on the other side of this habit? Those who reclaim their attention describe it as nothing short of transformative. Imagine feeling genuinely present in your own life again. Imagine your creativity flowing more naturally, your relationships deepening, your anxiety lessening, and a renewed sense of meaning emerging for the quiet spaces you've reclaimed. This isn't just about better focus. It's about psychological wholeness, what Jung called individuation. It's about restoring the integrity of your mental ecosystem, your psychological aura. To understand why constant digital distraction damages us so profoundly, we need to understand Jung's vision of the human psyche. Carl Gustav Jung, born in Switzerland in 1875, began as a close collaborator of Sigmund Freud. However, their paths dramatically diverged when Jung rejected Freud's insistence that human psychology was primarily driven by sexual repression. Where Freud saw pathology, Jung saw potential. Where Freud focused on the past, Jung looked toward future growth. This split led Jung to develop analytical psychology, a framework that extended far beyond Freud's theories. At its heart was Jung's revolutionary concept of the collective unconscious, a shared psychological substrate containing universal symbols and predispositions he called archetypes. Unlike the personal unconscious, which develops through individual experience, the collective unconscious represents our shared human inheritance, connecting us to all of humanity across time and space. Jung identified numerous archetypes, universal patterns that appear in cultures worldwide. These include the self, the organizing center of the psyche; the shadow, aspects of ourselves we reject; the animus/animus, our internal feminine/masculine aspects; and the persona, our social mask. These aren't abstract concepts, but living psychological forces that shape our experiences whether we recognize them or not. Central to Jung's psychology is the individuation process, the lifelong journey towards psychological integration and wholeness. Unlike modern self-improvement that focuses on enhancement, individuation is about becoming more authentically yourself by integrating unconscious aspects of your personality into consciousness. This process requires conscious engagement with your inner world, not escape from it. Jung understood psychological energy, which he called libido, though not in Freud's sexual sense, as a vital force that flows through the psyche. When this energy flows harmoniously between consciousness and the unconscious, we experience psychological well-being. When blockages occur, or when we become one-sided in our development, psychological symptoms emerge as the psyche's attempt to restore balance. The self in Jungian psychology isn't just the conscious ego, but the totality of the psyche, conscious and unconscious. Jung believed modern humans suffer primarily from disconnection from this deeper self, leading to the epidemics of meaninglessness and psychological fragmentation that characterize our time. Jung's work speaks directly to our current psychological crises. In an age of unprecedented external stimulation and diminishing inner awareness, his emphasis on integration, depth, and wholeness offers a corrective to our fragmented attention. His recognition that psychological health requires a dialogue between consciousness and the unconscious reveals why constant distraction is so damaging. It drowns out the subtle voices from within that guide us toward wholeness. When I speak of your psychological aura through a Jungian lens, I'm referring to what Jung understood as the energetic wholeness of the integrated psyche. Jung didn't use New Age terminology, but he did describe the psyche as an energy system that could be either harmonious or disrupted. In his own words, the psyche is a self-regulating system that maintains itself in equilibrium as the body does. This psychological energy field has several important characteristics. First, it encompasses both conscious and unconscious aspects of yourself. Your conscious mind, the thinking, analyzing part reading these words, is just the visible tip of a vast psychological iceberg. Below the surface lies the personal unconscious, your forgotten experiences, repressed feelings, and undeveloped abilities. And deeper still, the collective unconscious, those universal patterns and potentials shared by all humans. That in a healthy psyche, energy flows freely between these layers. You have access to your full range of emotions, your creativity, your intuition, and your deepest values. When this energy system is functioning optimally, you experience what Jung called psychological wholeness, a state of being fully alive and authentically yourself. The shadow self plays a crucial role in this energy system. Jung defined the shadow as those aspects of ourselves we've rejected, repressed, or disowned, often because they didn't fit with our self-image or social expectations. These might include negative qualities like anger, selfishness, or laziness, but also positive traits like creativity, sensitivity, or power that we've been unable to acknowledge. When we repress these aspects, we don't eliminate them. We simply push them into the unconscious where they continue to affect us in hidden ways. This repression creates what Jung would recognize as distortions in our psychological energy field. The shadow consumes enormous psychological energy to keep repressed, leaving us depleted and disconnected from our wholeness. Jung was particularly concerned with the fragmentation of consciousness in modern life. He observed that technological advances and social complexity were creating unprecedented divisions in the human psyche. He wrote, "Our world has become so complex and our consciousness so differentiated that we are in danger of completely losing contact with the psychological foundations that once bound us together." This fragmentation manifests as internal division, parts of ourselves at war with other parts, leading to self-sabotage, inconsistent behavior, and inner conflict. It also appears as external disconnection from nature, from community, from meaning, and from our deeper selves. We become psychological nomads, wandering from distraction to distraction without ever feeling at home in ourselves. Today, this fragmentation has reached unprecedented levels. We experience it as that nagging feeling of something missing despite external success, as chronic anxiety without obvious cause, as the emptiness that follows hours of scrolling, or as the subtle disconnection from our own bodily experience. We find ourselves mentally present in multiple locations simultaneously. Physically here, mentally elsewhere, emotionally nowhere. Jung would recognize these symptoms as evidence of a disturbed energy system, a weakened psychological aura. The good news is that this system naturally seeks rebalancing and wholeness. The first step in restoration is becoming aware of what's disrupting it, the modern habit that's keeping us perpetually fragmented. The habit destroying your psychological aura is continuous partial attention, the state of being perpetually distracted by digital stimulation. It's not just screen time, but the specific way we've learned to use technology, constantly shifting focus, never fully engaging with anything, maintaining superficial awareness of multiple information streams, and reflexively reaching for stimulation whenever boredom or discomfort arises. This habit manifests in checking your phone first thing in the morning before fully awakening. It's having multiple tabs open while working. It's the background noise of podcasts during chores. It's scrolling through social media while watching TV. It's a reflexive phone check during any moment of stillness. It's the constant task switching that fragments your day into confetti-sized moments. Jung never encountered smartphones or social media, but he understood the psychological danger of losing connection to our deeper selves. He wrote, "Modern man has lost all the metaphysical certainties of his medieval brother and set up in their place the ideals of material security, general welfare, and humanitarianism. Today, we might add constant connectivity to that list of substitutes for deeper meaning. The research on attention and digital consumption is alarming. A 2019 study by Gloria Mark at UC Irvine found that the average person switches tasks every 40 seconds when working at a computer. Microsoft research suggests the human attention span has fallen from 12 seconds in 2008 seconds today, shorter than a goldfish. The average American checks their phone 96 times daily, approximately once every 10 minutes of waking life. These aren't just interesting statistics. They represent a fundamental reshaping of human consciousness. We're training our minds to expect constant novelty and immediate gratification. Psychologists call this reward prediction error, the dopamine hit that comes from unexpected rewards. Social media and digital content are specifically engineered to exploit this mechanism, creating a cycle of craving and temporary satisfaction that never leads to genuine fulfillment. That I've experienced this myself. As a researcher and writer, I found my ability to sustain attention gradually eroding. Complex books I once devoured became challenging to finish. Deep conversations felt increasingly difficult to maintain. Creative insights that once emerged during quiet moments became rarer as I filled every gap with digital noise. Most concerning was a subtle but growing sense of detachment from my own life. As if I were watching it rather than living it. In Jungian terms, this habit damages our psychological aura in specific ways. First, it prevents the integration of experience. Jung believed that psychological growth requires reflection on our experiences, a process that happens naturally during periods of quiet contemplation. Constant distraction short-circuits this process, leaving experiences unprocessed and unintegrated. Second, it drowns out the subtle signals from the unconscious. Dreams, creative impulses, synchronicities, emotional undercurrents. These messengers from our deeper selves speak in whispers, not shouts. The noise of constant digital stimulation makes it impossible to hear these essential communications. Third, it reinforces the dominance of the conscious ego at the expense of the whole self. Jung warned about one-sided psychological development, where we become identified exclusively with our thinking function and rational mind. Digital platforms primarily engage these aspects while neglecting bodily wisdom, emotional intelligence, and intuitive knowing. Finally, this habit fragments the psychic energy Jung considered essential for psychological health. Rather than flowing coherently, our energy scatters in countless directions, leaving us depleted despite appearing busy. This state prevents the concentration of psychological energy needed for meaningful creativity, genuine connection, and authentic presence. Modern psychological research provides compelling evidence for Jung's intuitions about the importance of psychological integration and the dangers of fragmentation. While today's scientists use different terminology, their findings increasingly validate Jung's understanding of the human psyche. Neuroscientist Adam Gazzaley and psychologist Larry Rosen, in their book, A Distracted Mind, demonstrate that our brains haven't evolved to handle the level of distraction we now face. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions like attention control, decision-making, and goal setting, becomes overwhelmed by constant task switching, leading to cognitive depletion. This science confirms what Jung understood intuitively, that the human mind requires periods of focused attention to function optimally. Research on the default mode network, DMN, a brain system active when we're not focused on the external world, provides another fascinating connection to Jung's work. Neuroscientist Marcus Raichle discovered that this network activates during mind-wandering, self-reflection, and creative thinking, precisely the mental states Jung considered essential for psychological integration. Studies show that constant external stimulation suppresses DMN activity, potentially disrupting the brain's natural integration processes. Cal Newport, computer scientist and author of Deep Work, has documented how the capacity for sustained concentration correlates strongly with meaningful achievement and personal satisfaction. His research shows that the ability to focus deeply is becoming increasingly rare exactly as it becomes increasingly valuable, creating what he calls a winner-take-all economy, where those who can maintain attention have significant advantages. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow states, those optimal experiences of complete absorption in a challenging activity, aligns perfectly with Jung's understanding of directed psychological energy. Csikszentmihalyi found that people report greatest fulfillment during these states of undivided attention. Digital distraction makes achieving flow nearly impossible, as it requires exactly what our technology habits disrupt: uninterrupted concentration. Clinical psychologist Jonathan Haidt and social psychologist Jean Twenge have documented alarming correlations between social media use and rising rates of anxiety, depression, and loneliness, particularly among young people who've never known a world without digital distraction. Their research suggests that fragmented attention doesn't just reduce productivity, it fundamentally alters our relationship with ourselves and others. Particularly relevant to Jung's concept of the shadow is research on dissociation and psychological compartmentalization. Psychologists find that constant digital distraction can function as a form of emotional avoidance, preventing the integration of difficult feelings. This aligns precisely with Jung's warning that unacknowledged shadow material doesn't disappear but continues affecting us unconsciously. Jung's emphasis on symbolic thinking finds support in cognitive linguistics and embodied cognition research. These fields demonstrate that human understanding is fundamentally metaphorical and grounded in bodily experience, not just abstract rational thought. Our constant engagement with screens pulls us away from embodied knowledge toward disembodied information processing, creating the disconnection Jung would recognize as psychologically damaging. Contemporary neuroscientist Ian McGilchrist's work on brain hemisphere differences offers a particularly striking parallel to Jung's concerns. McGilchrist argues that Western culture increasingly favors left hemisphere modes of attention, narrow focus, abstraction, categorization, at the expense of right hemisphere modes, broad awareness, contextual understanding, embodied knowing. This hemispheric imbalance creates exactly the kind of psychological fragmentation Jung identified as the core problem of modern life. Jung would immediately recognize our current psychological challenges: rising rates of meaninglessness and existential depression despite material abundance, increasing difficulty with interpersonal relationships despite unprecedented connectivity, and widespread spiritual hunger despite information overload. These paradoxes reflect precisely the psychic imbalance he identified: the triumph of surface consciousness at the expense of depth. Jung offered a powerful alternative to our fragmented attention: active imagination, a method of engaging with the unconscious through focused attention on the images, feelings, and impulses that arise from within. Unlike passive distraction, active imagination requires deliberate engagement with your internal world. It's a practice of psychological integration rather than fragmentation. At its core, Jung's approach involves creating space for the unconscious to express itself, then consciously engaging with whatever emerges. While this might sound abstract, it translates into practical daily habits that directly counter our digital distraction. Here's how to implement this approach in today's context. Begin with creating technology boundaries. Jung would prescribe not just periodic digital detoxes, but regular, sacred spaces in your daily life free from external stimulation. This means 1. Designate the first and last hour of your day as screen-free zones. Keep devices outside your bedroom, if possible. Point 2. Create depth blocks of at least 90 minutes for focused work or contemplation without digital interruption. Point 3. Disable non-essential notifications and remove social media apps from your phone. Point 4. Implement regular Sabbath periods, whether hours, days, or longer, completely disconnected from digital technology. These boundaries create the container for genuine inner work. Within these spaces, practice what Jung called active imagination. Start with intentional stillness. Sit comfortably in a quiet space, eyes closed or softly focused. This isn't meditation aimed at emptiness, but a receptive awareness of what emerges from within. Notice the content of your consciousness. Without judgment, observe thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and images that arise. Jung would encourage special attention to emotions and images that carry energy or charge. Engage dialogically with significant content. When a strong feeling, image, or thought emerges, stay with it. Ask the questions, "What do you want me to know?" or "Why have you appeared now?" Allow responses to come in whatever form they take. Record your experiences. Jung was adamant about the importance of documenting inner work. Keep a journal of significant dreams, insights, and experiences. The act of writing or drawing externalizes unconscious content, making it available for conscious integration. Cultivate symbolic thinking. Jung recognized that the unconscious often communicates through symbols rather than literal statements. Practice looking beneath the surface of your experiences for deeper patterns and meanings. Implement this practice progressively, not perfectly. Start with just 10 to 15 minutes daily, gradually extending as your capacity for internal focus strengthens. The most common obstacles you'll face include impatience. Accustomed to instant digital gratification, you may initially find inner work unsatisfying or boring. Jung would recognize this as the ego's resistance to deeper engagement. Persist through this phase, which typically lasts 2 to 3 weeks. Distraction urges. Your mind, habituated to constant stimulation, will generate powerful urges to check devices. Notice these urges without acting on them, recognizing them as withdrawal symptoms rather than genuine needs. Uncomfortable emotions. As your capacity for presence increases, previously avoided feelings may emerge. This isn't a sign of failure, but of success. The psychological integration Jung recognized as healing. Shadow material. You may encounter aspects of yourself that challenge your self-image. Approach these with curiosity rather than judgment, remembering Jung's insight that integrating the shadow releases energy previously used for repression. The benefits of this practice typically unfold in stages. Within 1 to 2 weeks, most people notice improved sleep quality and reduced anxiety. After 3 to 4 weeks, enhanced concentration and memory typically emerge. Around the 6 to 8 week mark, many experience significant improvements in creativity and problem-solving ability. The deeper transformations Jung identified typically begin around 2 to 3 months of consistent practice. A stronger sense of personal meaning, improved relationships, greater emotional resilience, and what Jung called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that suggest a deeper order underlying everyday experience. This time frame isn't arbitrary. Neuroplasticity research confirms that significant brain changes require consistent practice over months, not days. Jung understood intuitively what neuroscience now confirms. Psychological integration is a gradual process requiring patient, consistent attention. The transformation from fragmented attention to psychological integration isn't theoretical. It's happening in real lives right now. Consider these experiences from people who've intentionally changed their relationship with digital distraction. Michael, a software engineer, found himself increasingly unable to focus at work despite his technical expertise. His constant tab switching and notification checking had fragmented his attention to the point where complex problem-solving felt impossible. After implementing Jung's practice of creating sacred space for focused attention, he experienced what he describes as a return to my actual mind. Within 3 months, not only had his productivity dramatically improved, but he reported a profound shift in his sense of self. I feel like I've reclaimed parts of my personality that had gone dormant. My curiosity, my playfulness, my ability to be fully present with an idea. From a Jungian perspective, Michael was experiencing the reintegration of aspects of himself that had been dissociated through fragmented attention. His return to wholeness represents exactly the psychological healing Jung prescribed. Sophia, a graduate student, found herself increasingly anxious and disconnected from her academic work despite passionate interest in her field. Her habit of constantly checking social media had created what she called a strange emptiness, like I was always performing my life rather than living it. After creating technology boundaries and implementing daily periods of active imagination, she experienced what Jung would recognize as synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that seemed to confirm her inner work. Ideas for my research started appearing in dreams. I'd meet exactly the right person at exactly the right time. It felt like once I started paying attention to my inner world, the outer world began responding differently. Jung would understand Sophia's experience as the natural result of re-establishing connection between conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche, allowing the self, not just the ego, to guide her life direction. Robert, a marketing executive and father of two, found himself increasingly irritable and emotionally disconnected despite career success. His digital consumption had created what he called a chronic background hum of anxiety that prevented genuine presence with his family. After implementing technology boundaries and regular periods of reflection, he encountered powerful shadow material, unconscious anger, and resentment he'd been suppressing. By engaging with these emotions rather than distracting from them, he experienced what Jung would call shadow integration. I realized I'd been using my phone to avoid difficult feelings. Facing them was uncomfortable, but ultimately freeing. My relationships have completely transformed because I'm bringing my whole self to them now. Each of these stories reflects Jung's understanding of psychological integration. The improvements weren't just in productivity or focus, but in the fundamental experience of being human, exactly what Jung meant by individuation. Of course, skepticism about making such changes is natural and valid. The most common objection is professional necessity. My job requires constant connectivity. Yet those who've implemented boundaries often discover that reduced reactivity actually improves their professional performance. As Jung noted, busyness does not equal effectiveness. Others worry about social disconnection. I'll miss out on what's happening. Yet many report that reducing digital distraction actually enhances their genuine social connections by improving the quality of their presence. Some fear boredom or discomfort. What will I do with all that quiet time? Jung would recognize this as the ego's resistance to encountering the unconscious. The initial discomfort is temporary, while the benefits of integration are lasting. Perhaps the most significant resistance comes from what Jung called the shadow of technology, the unconscious fear of facing ourselves without distraction. As Jung wrote, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. We've explored how constant digital distraction fragments our psychological energy, what Jung might metaphorically call our aura. This habit isn't just reducing our productivity, it's fundamentally altering our relationship with ourselves, disconnecting us from the deeper currents of our own lives. As Jung recognized, the greatest tragedy isn't suffering but meaninglessness. The sense of being separated from our authentic selves. Jung's psychology offers profound insight into our current crisis because he understood that human beings need wholeness, not fragmentation, depth, not perpetual novelty, and connection to the unconscious, not endless external distraction. His concept of individuation, the process of becoming more fully yourself, provides a powerful alternative to our culture of scattered attention. The path forward isn't about rejecting technology, but about restoring it to its proper place in a psychologically balanced life. Jung would prescribe neither digital asceticism nor uncritical embrace, but conscious relationship, using technology intentionally while preserving sacred spaces for the inner work essential to psychological health. Your first steps toward reclaiming your psychological aura are straightforward. 1. Create one technology-free hour at the beginning and end of each day. Point 2. Designate specific times to check email and social media rather than responding continuously. Point 3. Begin a simple journal practice, recording dreams, significant emotions, and meaningful coincidences. Point 4. Practice sitting quietly for even 5 minutes daily, noticing what emerges from within. These small changes initiate what Jung called the most important question anyone can ask: what myth am I living? By myth, Jung meant the deeper story that gives meaning and coherence to our experiences. When we live unconsciously, fragmented by distraction, we inhabit myths not of our choosing. Often the myth of perpetual consumption and superficial connection. As you reclaim your attention, you begin to discover your authentic myth, the deeper purpose that has been quietly waiting beneath the noise. This discovery isn't about dramatic outer change, but about remembering who you already are beneath the distractions that in Jung's words. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. The awakening Jung described isn't some esoteric achievement, but your birthright, the natural state of a psyche in harmony with itself. By reclaiming your attention from fragmentation, you're not becoming someone new. You're returning to your original wholeness. The choice is yours, and it's made new in each moment. Distraction or presence, fragmentation or integration, noise or meaning. Your psychological aura, your energy field of consciousness, is responding to every choice, either dispersing into countless fragments or gathering into coherent wholeness. Choose wisely, choose consciously, and watch as the world changes with your vision.